Hey everyone, welcome to episode number 13 of Chasing Growth. Today, I want to talk about something that's very important when the pressure is on, when situations are changing, when not everything is as clear as could be, when we're receiving information from all places. It's very important to know how to respond and not to react. It's during this season when we're dealing with the coronavirus and the pressure of what's happening, people losing their jobs, churches are closed and other things, when we should be very good responding and not reacting. We saw what happened at the beginning with the whole coronavirus. People going crazy to the store, buying toilet paper, buying all kind of things they didn't need. And actually because that reaction to another problem, which is people who actually were in need of those things, they were missing all those things. So reacting in many situations is bad. Now, reacting sometimes is not that bad. Reacting sometimes it helps. It can save you in an accident. Sometimes if you see your child falling, in a split second, you run and rescue them. Those type of reactions are fine. So reactions are there to help us. Reactions are there to help us, but when we start reacting to situation, when we start reacting to relationships, is when we have the problem. Now, a lot of people use reaction and responding like it's the same word, but it's not. It's very different. Reaction is very natural. Reaction, how we react to, for example, to an accident, in a car when we're driving and we're in an accident, we don't have time to think. We don't have time to come with a plan or anything. We just react. And sometimes that reaction can save your life. One time I was in a camping trip with some friends and I fell. I fell around 8 feet down on rocks. And when I lost my balance, I fall. I supposed to fall on my back. But somehow when I'm falling on the air, I turn around and I landed on my shoulder, thank goodness, because it could have been really bad falling on my back on those rocks. A year later, I got surgery on my shoulder because the fall, and not on my back, thank goodness. But that was just a reaction. The people who was there said that when I was falling, I turned around, a reaction, something to save myself. When somehow we're in a situation like that, we tend to react, and that can help you. When the adrenaline kick in. But that's not the best thing to do when have to do with life and relationships and situation and news that we receive. But a lot of people was reacting. We saw politicians just to reacting to the news, trying to be on TV, trying to be on one side saying this, so we're gonna say something different. So we saw many politicians and some doctors saying, hey, everything gonna be okay, no big deal, go outside, be with people, blah, blah, blah. And now you cannot find that people anywhere because they were wrong. They just reacted. They didn't do their homework and they just went for it. And they try to hide, and they have been deleting those videos from their social media, but it's too late. You can find them anyway. So when there's a place for reacting, a place where it can save us, but in situations in life, reacting is not good. And I think this season will help us to mature a lot. Now, why is so important to learn to respond and not to react? When in relationship, when you just react, if you're in leadership, in your marriage, in your church, when you just react, you just reacting out of an emotion, very naturally, and you don't know what is happening at the moment. And a lot of times that will trigger another reaction. So many people lost their marriage, people lost their job, people lost their credibility, they lost ministries. Some people is one reaction away from a lawsuit. So that's why it's so important to learn to respond. Now, during the times when there's a lot of pressure, when the things are not clear, people who's not good leaders they get found out. Because they tend to react. They tend to do stupid things. They start panicking. They start running around. They start making decisions on the fly, and they're not responding. A good leader, a mature Christian, will learn to respond. What is the key though? The key to learn to respond and not to react is to first of all acknowledge the emotion. And let me explain you this. When we react, we tend to do it from our emotion, for how we feel. We're angry, we're unhappy, we're sad, we're scared, whatever. We react. That's what happened. That's why people was running to the store to get toilet paper. They was reacting out of fear. But to be able to respond, I have to acknowledge the emotion. For example, saying, I'm fearful of the news. I'm fearful what's happening. I'm fearful what's going on, and you acknowledge it. And one of the things that's very good, especially if you have somebody who you can talk with, your spouse, maybe a friend, when you verbalize those things, it helps you a lot because actually lose power. When you verbalize that emotion, actually when you hear it, maybe you're gonna realize how stupid it is the way you feel. Or maybe the way you feel is not really the best way to feel with the situation. Maybe saying it out loud will help you to see things as they are and not as they appear to be. Now, the news cycle, they need to feel 24/7 news cycle now. News used to be just, one time a day, so the news was specific to inform people. Now the cable created this 24/7 news cycle, so they have to make up stuff and repeat. People who watch news all day, they constantly reacting because they hear bad news, and they're emotionally sick because all what they hear is bad things, but really bad things. And not only that, every other commercial is medicine. So you not only feel bad emotionally, you're getting sick too. Anyway, so if you're in that a place where you're just reacting, you need to acknowledge the emotion. I'm fearful, I'm scared, I'm concerned. If you're a Christian, you should be completely aware that you have to acknowledge the emotion. We deal with this every day when we face situations. One time, I received a phone call from the school. My son was sick, he was crying, I was able to talk to him, and I panicked. I have a bad reaction. I took my car, I left my job, I drove like 100 miles per hour. I got to the school, and all what it was he had something in his hand, a little mark, and he was just freaking out. But my reaction was I put in jeopardy my finances. I couldn't get a ticket. I put in jeopardy my life. I couldn't get into an accident. I put in jeopardy my whole family, because what if the accident was bad and something happened to me and I cannot work anymore and all that stuff. So reacting is really bad. We have to learn to respond. That's why we call the people, the firefighters, the police, first responders and not first reactors, because they prepare themselves to be able to respond even under pressure in a good way. So we have to acknowledge the emotion. So whatever you feel in these days with the coronavirus, just admit it. I'm fearful. I'm concerned. I'm scared. I don't know what I'm going to do. I lost my job. It's Monday tomorrow. And what's going to happen? I cannot go to interviews because I cannot be with people. And acknowledge it. Don't try to hide it. Acknowledge the emotion so you stop reacting and you learn to respond. Now, good leaders, good people, will learn to put themselves ahead of time in situations. They will prepare themselves. They will try to respond. For example, what are the special forces or even the policemen and the firefighters do? They train. They put themselves in hypothetical situations in the trainings so they can feel the pressure and they learn to respond under pressure. They go to different scenarios, they do different things, so they practice, and they repeat. So eventually when the pressure is on, they know how to respond and not to react, because they know their reaction, because in the reaction you're not thinking, the reaction you're just doing out of emotion. You can do something that can end up being a big mistake. So they'll learn to respond. So you can do the same. You can put yourself in hypothetical situations, especially if you're in charge of people. This day, people is looking to you for answers. If you're a leader, if you're in leadership, you have a position when people report to you. Right now, people is looking at you for answers, looking for in you for the way to respond, for plans, for how we're gonna do this. And if you're panicking and you're just reacting, you don't deserve to be in that chair. You have to just give it to somebody else because you're not ready. It's in these times when real leaders you can see them and find them, versus the one that they're there because they know somebody, they're there because they have been in a place for a long time, they're there because the people who chose them, they don't know better either. But it's in this time when you will find out who's a good leader and who's not. So to become a good one, you can put yourself in situations ahead of time, hypothetical situations. What will you do with this? What will you do with that? How will you feel when this happens? Now, you have to be honest. You cannot be a superhero and you put yourself, say, if this happened, I will be this. If this happened, I will do Superman and Spider-Man, and that's how I react to danger. That's not true. You have to be very honest and be able to come up with plans. One of the things that you can do, especially in relationships, for example, we heard a lot these days. For some reason, this is nothing to do with the coronavirus, but because the vice president is on TV a lot, there have been a lot of talks about the rules that he follows, meeting ladies and never being alone with another lady, etc., etc. I totally agree with that. I think it's very good. He's probably anticipating the emotion. He's just trying to avoid having a reaction that could happen in private, that could cost him his family, his job, his reputation, all that stuff. So that's the same thing that we can do. One of the things that I have done in the past is to put myself ahead of situations. What will happen if? And I have some things that I try to always stay and respond the same way. So for example, if somebody will attack me or say something about me, I have decided ahead of time I will never defend myself. Why? Because that makes me upset. If somebody, I'm just gonna be honest, who likes to be attacked and people lie about you and say things about you? So there have been people saying that I mistreat my family. I heard people saying that I mistreat my children and stuff like that. The thing that really hurt, and they don't even know me. And I have, and so you can be, if you're in leadership and you're a public person, you may be attacked. You may be attacked in different ways. And for some reason in Christianity, that happens more often than it should. I mean, between us Christians, we should support one another and love one another, and not being attacking the character of people, etc., etc. But I have decided when somebody attack me and say things that are not true and come from a wrong place, I will never defend myself. And why? Because I know if somebody says something, especially when I have to do with my family, I will be upset. So if I react when I'm upset, probably I will, and I will do something wrong. I will say something wrong. So to avoid that, I have decided ahead of time, if somebody attack me, somebody accuse me, I won't defend myself. It's something that we all should do. We all should put ourselves in situations that we learn. We try to be ready. There are going to be times when it's hard to respond. Another situation, especially in a work environment, when people work with emails and messages, and people, they don't use the phone anymore. Everybody texts, everybody email, and sometimes you have 2 or 3 offices very close together and people still email when they could go and talk with the person and avoid a lot of misunderstanding. But if, for example, you receive an email and the email is criticizing your work, is criticizing what you're doing, is criticizing the way that you perform, whatever, you made something, let's say you work in a creative world and you're making things, you're creating things, and those things are your baby, and somebody come and criticize your baby, say that design is ugly, I don't like, that doesn't represent the company, blah, blah, blah. It's very difficult for you to say that you won't take it personal. It's always personal when that happens. So the worst thing that you can do, you receive an email like that, for example, it will be to respond immediately, because you will respond from a place of being upset or being angry, from a place where you will say or do something that will cost you a relationship or your job. So, for example, I personally, when that happened, I will write an email and I will send it myself, and I will read it the next day. In a lot of occasions, when I read it the next day, I realize the situation is not such a big deal. I realize that I don't have to respond that criticism. And I realize sometimes it's better just to respond saying, hey, thank you very much for the input. I will keep working on it, blah, 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 blah. But the original emotion, angry, upset, it could take me to a place where I react, and you can make things really bad. So there you go. I have another situation there that I prepare myself, that you can prepare yourself to never react. So it's very important to learn to respond and not to react. Okay, now, as Christians, we have you can call it a benefit or you can call it an advantage. What is the advantage? And I'm not saying that it's easy what I'm gonna say next, but we always should know how to respond. Well, let me tell you something. One thing is that we know as Christians that in our lives there's no accidents. All things work together for good, for His glory, and He's working His plan, His purpose in our life. And I'm referring to God. He worked His plan, so there's no accident. You might be surprised, but God is not surprised. So starting from there, and also knowing that Romans 8:28 saying that all things work together for good. So even as surprising this news is, as difficult this is, it's not a surprise for God, and it's still for my good and for His glory. So that right there, it should help us so much to be great responding. Now, I don't want to say that when you receive the bad news from the doctor or from your job, when your whole humanity is shaken, all your dreams and everything fall apart, that is easy. But as I mentioned before, acknowledge the emotion. And as Christians, we also have the other benefit. We can take that to God and talk to Him and say, I feel sad, I'm angry, I'm so concerned, I feel destroyed, I need help. And we can do it on our knees and ask God to help us, and He will do that. Now, the problem is that many times we try to fix it and manipulate it ourselves, because when things are good, we tend to not be as close to God, I guess, from our viewpoint. So when things go bad, we feel a little guilty to go to God because we haven't really been seeking Him when everything went well. So maybe that's something you need to change in your life, and maybe you should be seeking God even when things go well. But regardless of that, He still takes you back and always ready for you and to receive you. And He will allow things in your life for your good. He working all things together for good. So as Christians, we should be so good responding. Now, what can we do as Christians to help us remember that? And today everybody has time. A lot of people is not working. A lot of people is at home. So if you're at home, I want to challenge you to do something with your stories. Try to trace in your life different situations. They happen. Maybe world event like the coronavirus. A world event that happened in so many years, and this happened, and then this happened, and this happened, and because all those things happen, I'm right here right now. Doing that will remind you, and you can have it in a big place where you can see every day when you wake up, so it remind you that God is in control. It will help you. It will help you to understand that all things work together for good. And as Christians, we shouldn't never be in panicking. If we find ourselves in that place of we're panicking a little bit and reacting, we should stop. Stop immediately and acknowledge the emotion. I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm frustrated. And this morning, I wake up this morning thinking about some situations related to my work and just going through it. And I got a little frustrated just by myself, just thinking about it. And I thought, you know what? I need to stop. I need to stop thinking about all these things and go to pray to God. And I told God, I feel this, I feel that. And immediately there was a release of that. I was able, this is the thing, when we learn to not react, if I'm reacting from those frustrations, my goodness, I will make a mess of my career, I will make a mess of everything. But no, my response was, you know what, there's nothing I can do. I went and I prayed to God. He brought peace to my heart. And then I was able to see things as they are, as not as things appear to be. So learning to respond is very good. So, and one of the things as Christians we can do is trace events in our life and see how God has worked in all those events for our good through history. And I'm going to end with a story. And like I said, learning to respond have to do with everything with acknowledge the emotion. I'm upset, I'm angry, I'm unhappy, I'm frustrated. Maybe I'm too happy. Maybe I'm too excited about this. It shouldn't be the best time to buy this because I'm too happy. So when you acknowledge the emotion and you can take it to God or you think about it, it will help you to respond better. And sometimes the best response is doing nothing. A lot of times the best response is doing nothing. And like I said, as Christian, we should be expert responding. Why? Because we know that God is in control and there's no accident in our life. And a great thing to do to remember that is to trace events in our lives. Trace events in your life and you will see how God's work and how He has been putting all these things together for your good, for my good, in an amazing way. So let me finish with this story. I'm gonna tell you something that probably some of you may say, "What? How in the world?" But let me tell you this. So I like to say this, and the reason because I like to tell this story is because it's to remind people that it's true. God is working all things together for good. Let me tell you an example. The Vietnam War. Vietnam War was a horrible thing. A lot of people died. Terrible thing for a lot of young people. A lot of families get broken. A lot of people with problems after the war and all that stuff. I know that. It's a terrible thing. But even that, God was working all things together for good. A young man went to Vietnam during the conflict, a Christian, and with the Marines. And the young man in that environment, he touched bottom with alcohol, putting his life at risk, driving drunk, all that kind of stuff. The young man, when was finishing his tours in Vietnam and all that stuff, I guess all the responsibility he had there, he realized he needed to come back to God, and he rededicate his life to God. Because he rededicated his life to God, he went to a Christian college. Because he went to a Christian college, he met a Christian lady. And this Christian lady was, when she was 12, she was called to become a missionary. Because she was called become a missionary, they both decided to go to the mission field. They got married, they have children, and they went to the mission field. And they went to the mission field to plant new churches in some countries. Because they went to plant new churches, they started new churches in, you can call it the suburbs of some capital cities in South America. Because they went there and they started some churches there, they actually opened a church close where I live. Because they started a church close where I live is where my parents actually went, and they saved their marriage. Their marriage was dying, close to a divorce, and they went to this church that this young man who was in the Vietnam War and touched bottom and rededicate his life to Him because all what happened there, and he decided to follow Christ, and he met this lady, become missionaries. They went to plant this church, and because this church was planted close to my house, and my parent was in need of help, they went to the church. They saved their marriage. Because they saved their marriage in that church that young man started, I started attending to church too. Trying to find solutions to my own life and all that stuff. Because I started attending to that church, I met my wife. And because I met my wife, which actually was the daughter of that young man who went to Vietnam, we got married and blah, blah, blah. Today we're here. So yes, as bad as Vietnam War was, to some extent, God was working all things together even before I was born for me. And that's how we have to see it. All of you. Everyone. So, and with that story, I just want to make the point that every time something happens, every news that we hear, instead to react, especially Christians, we shouldn't react like crazy. We should be the light and the salt of the world in the way that we respond, because we know that all things work together for good. That we're not alone. This is not a surprise for God, and there's no accidents. And yeah, He's working something. And if you get sick, of anything, God is still in control. He's still working something. So we as Christians, if you're a Christian leader, my goodness, you have a huge responsibility to learn to respond well, especially when the pressure is on. People who's following you because they want to follow or because they're under your leadership, you are responsible before them to have great responses to situations and no reactions. And if you're a Christian in general, we should be the light of the world in the way we respond to this crazy news, to these crazy things that are happening. And to finish, when we have the Bible, and the Bible have been telling us for years. When we have been reading it, we have been studying it, that this thing's going to happen. This event will happen because they announced that Jesus is coming back. See, a few weeks ago, we celebrate Easter. And we celebrate the tomb is empty, right? And he resurrected, blah, 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 all this stuff. All great. But he also said that he went to heaven and he's coming back. So even in those things, we don't need to be surprised. We shouldn't. So I want to challenge you, all of you, to learn to respond and not to react, to acknowledge the emotion and to deal with emotion before you respond, and then you can have a great response and save relationship, save environments, save all kind of things in your life because you're responding well. And second, trace in your life those events. And I promise you, when you start doing that, you will remind how God always has been faithful and nothing has been out of control. He has been working all things together for good for your life. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for watching these videos. And please share this online on Facebook and YouTube. And I will talk to you soon. In the next episode, we're going to be talking about discipline. I'm very excited about that. And I'm going to try to do some things different. So thank you very much for listening. God bless you. Have a great quarantine time and enjoy the time with your family. God bless you. Bye.